Hello friends, welcome to the third season of Grad School Buddy,
a show that simplifies all your questions about graduate school.
Hosting this podcast are Ebelechukwu, an impact storyteller and development analyst,
and Chukwuebuka, a development finance specialist with a focus on the private sector of emerging markets.
Every 3 weeks, we highlight the voices and stories of people who have gone through the graduate school journey across different walks of life.
We hope our invaluable insights on this show help you make better graduate school decisions.
3, 2, 1.
Hello,
Hi, friends. Chukwuebuka, how are we doing now? Your hello.
Hello is right here.
What is it? Oh, it's hello that we wrote, though. No, vex.
No, I know what we wrote.
Hello, friends. Goodbye. Okay, hello friends, and welcome back to another episode of Grad School Buddy. Today, I am here with my co-host, as always, Chukwuebuka.
Hi everyone. Good to have you on this episode.
Today, we have two people who are going to take us on dissertation writing. For starters, our guests have not submitted an official bio. So, who do we have on our mics today? And can you tell us one thing about you that people do not know that would never make its way to your bio, but it's a huge part of who you are?
Okay, I'm Dr. Alan Roda, one of the authors of Ph.Done, here with Dr. Lauren Saunders. And as for bio, I got my Ph.D. in ethnomusicology at NYU and have since spent many years working with doctoral students to help them finish their Ph.D.s through our company, Dissertation Editor. And the thing that would never make my bio is that I love swing dancing. And my wife is lead singer in a swing dance band. We love jazz and dancing to jazz. That's one of my favorite things.
Interesting. Swing dancing. Okay. Nice.
You see, this is why I like asking this question, because I would never have guessed.
Thanks so much for having us. I'm Lauren Saunders, Alan's co-author of Ph.Done, and my job title is the Vice President of Editing and Research at Dissertation Editor. My Ph.D. is from the University of Denver in Literary Studies. I looked at the use of gesture and movement in the writings of James Joyce and Virginia Woolf. And one thing that wouldn't have made it into my bio is that I love to cook, and I have a 2-year-old. So she loves to help me cook. So now every recipe I make needs to have a toddler appropriate cooking job, which has really limited my repertoire.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Her favorite ingredient is cream of tartar. And I keep telling her that it is not required in very many dishes.
Something that brings you both together is Ph.Done. But how did you both get on that boat where you were like, hey, we've gone through this process and this is a project we want to embark on? What was that journey?
So the truth is, I started this book. I realized I dug up a first draft of it from 2016. So this book has been percolating for a long time. Over the years, as we've gathered more and more experience and our company has grown and we've brought on more and more talented people, at some point I said, I've got to finish this. Lauren, help. And then she came in, and it was maybe only a third written at that point. And she came in, and the two of us really helped bring it to the forefront and actually finish it. But it really started from the idea of, this is the book I wish I'd had when I started my PhD. And why did nobody give me that book? Because, well, it wasn't there. And so I realized I'm going to make that book so other people can have this book when they start their PhD. And that was really kind of the inspiration. And Lauren really helped us move it along and actually get it to completion.
And I think the thing we both found as we were finishing the book in terms of the first draft, and then what we really added in the final draft is anecdotes from real dissertation writers. And I think the thing we found was that there tends to be a bit of silence about the struggles of graduate students. And, podcasts like yours are helping fill that gap but the people who have finished a PhD tend to put that into its own compartment and leave it alone. People who are in the process sometimes have a hard time talking about how difficult the graduate school process is. So what we really wanted to do was share stories about this very common struggles that all graduate students are facing.
You know, as a parent of small children, I'm just now putting this parallel there because I think that people who have finished are like those people you talk to with like grown children. And they're the ones who say, oh, I remember doing that. That was such a lovely time. It was so cute. Look at the pictures of my cute, adorable 3-year-olds. And they don't remember like the anxiety of sleep deprivation and being, covered with variety of child bodily fluids and like just like the throes of parenting, early kids. And then similarly, the ones who are in it, we don't share that part on social media. It's just like, hey, look at my adorable children at the beach. Hey, look at my dissertation. We only share the shiny parts. And so I think for us, being able to acknowledge the genuine struggle of the doctoral process and how common it is so that people didn't feel alone was such a huge goal. I was just thinking of that parallel. Kind of feels like it works. If there's one takeaway I'd really want for someone reading this book to be, it would be, you are not alone. The struggle is real and there is support for you. And hopefully that will be the message that they take away from it.
Sure. Thank you both for sharing. And I definitely agree with that. I feel like having finished my master's, I would talk to some people and they'll tell me, hey, I just had my first class. They just gave me the reading list. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember that. And, me remembering it in retrospect is very different from feeling it at that time and feeling the anxiety and wondering, does any other person feel this? So definitely like books like yours, I'm very excited that we get to talk about the whole process and kind of help more people figure out their way with this journey.
Indeed. And now diving right into this. So what's the book about and who is it for?
So I would say that the book is for anyone who's in graduate school and has a long writing project. So we've tailored it specifically in terms of the content included in a doctoral dissertation, but it's really for anyone who is undertaking a huge academic writing project. And what we tried to do is really balance the nuts and bolts of what needs to be included in the dissertation and in the research process, as well as tips for, academic writing in general, work-life balance, the things that are part of grad school that are outside of the dissertation document itself. And in addition to that, the anecdotes that I mentioned from real dissertation writers. So all of our nitty-gritty advice about what's included in the dissertation and what it takes to get through the process is paired with stories from those who have already succeeded or failed in that process.
Adding to that, anyone who's in grad school thinking about a large writing project, but also I really think this is an important book for someone who's thinking about whether or not they want to go to grad school, because it's a way for you to enter that process with your eyes wide open. Here's what to expect. This is what it's going to look like. And if that's exciting for you, go for it. And I hope it is. And it was exciting for me and I went for it and I'm so glad I did. But for some people, they might be a moment to reevaluate and decide if this is really, what I want to do. And I feel like that is another tremendous gift that this offers.
Indeed, and I do think it's quite important because for some, they enter the program and then realize midway that it's a lot more demanding than they expected, or a lot more different than they expected. And at that point, it's, do I just continue? I'm already, midway. Let me just try to finish this off, even though if I had more information, I wouldn't have done that. And I guess even for some, it helps you to become better prepared and you could say dive into the water with the right techniques. Great. So off the top of your head, Lauren, what are some of the main components of getting Ph.Done? What's in it anyway? What are the key elements, you could say?
Absolutely. So in terms of a couple of the general elements of getting Ph.Done, I think we talk a lot about how to treat writing your dissertation as a full-time job, set a schedule, have a writing practice, rather than waiting for inspiration to strike, and the whole concept of writer's block, which I don't think I believe in anyway, figuring out a way to work efficiently in a way that keeps you moving forward. And in order to do that, we kind of provide a roadmap for, what goes into your introduction, what goes into your literature review throughout the whole dissertation process. But I would say one of my key takeaways for getting Ph.Done is how to work your life around your dissertation and your dissertation around your life.
And then I'd add to that, from just sort of the nuts and bolts perspective, is for those who aren't really intimately familiar with what a dissertation is or accomplishes, it's finding something that nobody knows and then figuring out a way to find out what that is and then share it. So, there's lots of processes and protocols, but ultimately a dissertation is contributing something to the knowledge base of humanity that was not there before. And it's kind of exciting and daunting and intimidating and beautiful all at the same time. And so probably I think one of the hardest parts of the dissertation is really distilling that idea and figuring out what is the question that nobody knows the answer to, that I'm going to be able to find the answer to, and how am I going to do it? And once you've done that, then the rest of the pieces start to fill in. But that's kind of, I feel like, the first and biggest hurdle of the process, and in some ways the most exciting.
First of all, I just want to say that, Lauren, why would you air my dirty laundry outside like that? Because you said you don't believe in writer's block. I am like writer's block personified. I'm always having a writer's block.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that, telling people I don't believe in writer's block. So part of the reason I say that is my undergraduate background is in creative writing, and I really attribute a lot of my happiness during the dissertation writing process to the fact that I had sort of a writing practice already. And one of the things we were told to do was set a timer and just start writing. Don't self-edit and don't stop for 10 minutes or so. And just giving yourself permission to write nonsense is so freeing. And even if you start writing, this is stupid, I don't want to do this, I don't think this is helping me, it actually really is. When I say I don't believe in writer's block as well, I don't mean that I think that you can always sit down and write exactly what you want to write. So if you sit down to your computer and think, I need to write a brilliant concluding paragraph to this section that synthesizes all my literature, that might not be possible, but you can write something. So I always tell people, jump somewhere else, go to a chapter that is a little more conducive to, where your energy level and your writing momentum is at the moment, or even if not that, what's a writing related task you can do? Do you need to organize your reference list? Is there something else you could work on? So giving yourself permission to write nonsense and giving yourself permission to pivot to something else, I think, is key to avoiding that writer's block. It's not going to be perfect the first time, no matter what you do.
And the other part of that too, in the book, we talk about picking up your dissertation every day. So even if all you did was, work on the references or add one sentence somewhere and then you had to edit it later, picking it up every day keeps the ideas percolating in your mind. It keeps it on the forefront of your consciousness so that when you're doing chores or driving, you can still have epiphanies and ideas about your dissertation that you can bring forward later. One of the real dangers is when someone stops writing and then the day becomes 3 days, and then 3 days becomes a week, and then a week becomes 2 weeks. And then they say, okay, I'm blocking off today and I'm going to go back to it. Great. But they spend the first 2 hours just remembering what they were working on before they're able to, dive back in. So I really encourage everyone to, I say, pick it up every day or try to make it longer when you go to sleep than it was when you woke up, even if it's just a few words. Touch it every day in some way. And that helps maintain that momentum so that when you do have a block of free time, things are likely to flow a little more easily.
Okay, thank you, Lauren and Alan. To recap on some of the really great advice I've picked up on in the last few minutes. Number one, you said, pick up your dissertation every day. It keeps your ideas alive. Number two, something Lauren talked about was also like jumping to chapters that match your energy, which is something that I 100% relate with. And, something else that you talked about that I feel is going to be very helpful for me as a person is setting a timer and just writing without allowing yourself to overthink it or self-edit in the moment, knowing that you can go back to look at it. So thank you for sharing this point. And I guess this is a good segue to our next question, which is about the preliminary stage of the research. So we know that it comprises a lot of things, whether it's like your intro, you talked about finding something that no one knows about and figuring out what it is and finding out how you can share it with people. So first of all, from choosing your title to writing your intro, your abstract, and kind of navigating through the literature review. Now that you have gone through this phase, what are some of the things you wish you had known about preliminary research phase? And now that you know it, what would you tell someone to do differently?
So there's one piece of advice about the literature review that I give often. So that seems to be a common misconception. A lot of people feel like the literature review should be their review or summary of all the literature they have read about their topic. And so the name is a little bit misleading in that way. So we often have students who write their first draft of that chapter, and each paragraph begins with an author's name and is followed by a short description of what that author did, and they move on to the next one. And that's basically an annotated bibliography, not really a literature review. What a literature review does is it answers the question for the reader, why is this important? So your chapter 1, your beginning, you've laid out, what is the problem? And what is this research? What am I talking about? Basic broad strokes overview. And then the second chapter, that literature review, is for why is it important? Why should the reader trust the author of this dissertation to provide worthwhile results and conclusions? And the answer is because the author of this dissertation is building upon things that other people have written, disagreeing and or contradicting what other people have written, taking something that someone else has written and doing it in a different way. And so every sentence of that literature review should actually be about your dissertation topic as seen through the lens of other things that have been written, and should always be framed in such a way to justify, why is my research important? Why should the reader care about it? And I feel like that's one of the biggest tips I give for people in that early phase, is making sure to then organize your literature review around different themes that come up in your research and all the people who've talked about that theme, and how everyone who's done that is further supporting the validity and importance of your research.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I would say another big misconception about getting started with the dissertation writing process is that you need to and or should write the introduction first. I think that it's actually best to start with that literature review and, get as far as you can through the planning your methodology before you even bother sitting down to the introduction, because while it comes first in the document, it's almost definitely going to be the last thing you're still tinkering with at the end, because the study you conduct, the results, the way you interpret your literature and synthesize that is all going to really have to shape how you write that introduction. I would say most dissertation writers have to edit that very last. I passed my dissertation defense with minor corrections, and that for me meant completely rewriting my introduction. I didn't have to touch any other chapter, which was really a welcome break, but I had to completely rewrite my introduction because even at that stage, I had written it first and I hadn't gone back in enough detail to rewrite it to inform the course that my dissertation actually ended up taking. So I wouldn't put too much pressure on getting your introduction perfect first. I would give yourself some time to come back to that. And if you're going to do some writing practice, write a crummy first draft with the understanding that you're going to come back and edit it later. The introduction is a key place for that practice.
Great. Thank you very much, both of you, really, because I think that's one of the most difficult parts, how to get started. Now, moving into the data aspect. So what are the best practices? So we know what we want to do, but how do we get there?
So one of the things that I think is really helpful here is to be a little bit flexible and nimble in your approach. So I work with a lot of students who set out with the idea that they're going to conduct a certain type of research and then realize they need to pivot and conduct a different type of research. So creating, as you're setting out, a design that allows you to potentially shift can be extremely valuable. And the example I'll provide is this sort of never-ending debate between qualitative analysis or quantitative analysis. And if you're going to do a quantitative analysis, you might distribute a survey to a large group of people and get all their responses, tally their results, run some statistics, and then, write up your results. If you're going to do a qualitative analysis, then you're going to talk to people. You're going to conduct interviews. You're going to look at those recordings and you're going to find out how those people felt or thought about, different ideas. So as you're setting out to do your research, you might realize, oh, the people I want to interview aren't available for me to talk to them. So maybe I'll just see if they can fill out a survey instead, and maybe I can get enough survey responses to be statistically significant. Or you might have the opposite problem. I set out to do a survey, but I'm realizing I'm not getting enough responses. So maybe I'll just see if the people who did respond would be willing to sit down with an interview. And then you can pivot your research. You're still driving at the same ideas, but instead of asking, how do people feel about X, Y, or Z? You're pivoting to how many people feel a particular way about X, Y, and Z. And you're changing the lens through which you share the exact same research. So being nimble and flexible in the beginning to know that there's a chance you might need to switch, I feel like can be extremely valuable.
Yeah, I would add a couple of things to that. Excellent advice. And I would say that it's important at this stage in the process to spend a lot of time liaising with your advisor in particular, as well as your other committee members. And if you have a methodologist on your committee, making sure that your research questions align well with the methodology you want to go for, and making sure that if you do need to change methodology, you're making sure that it still aligns with your research questions. And if it doesn't, that you're redrafting those. So the more time you can spend on making sure that is all dialed in will save you a lot of effort in the long run, because the last thing you want is having conducted your study to find that your advisor says, actually, I don't think this methodology really aligns with that research question. Try again. And the other thing I would say is that this is a pretty good time to be a pessimist and a risk management specialist and think about what are the things that could go wrong and what is my backup plan. So what if the IRB doesn't approve this? What is my pivot then? What if the site where I want to conduct this study says no? What are my alternatives to that? So very similar to what Alan is suggesting in the need at some points to move from qualitative to quantitative or back again as the situation permits. So as much as you can develop some plan A's as well as plan B's and C's, again, it's a lot of work up front, but that'll save you time in the long run.
Interesting. Ebele, do you have any comments on this, seeing as you've gone through this journey?
You listing out the number of ways that things can go wrong, in quotes, is very beautiful, because I feel like sometimes you think that you have covered all your grounds, but life happens. Definitely putting it out there that it's good to have an open mind, be willing to be flexible. That's just something that I will reiterate and something that I know has helped me, Chukwuebuka, like you asked. Sometimes you might even start off with a topic and you think, okay, you have all the information to find out what you think you need to find out about that topic. But the truth is, sometimes for the things that we were doing, if you didn't have the data, you can't just be guessing. So that was also another way that might have required one to pivot. So definitely being flexible. You said, it's good to be pessimistic, but I would also add that you also need to give yourself that breath of sunshine, because sometimes like everything can fall apart and you need to be able to reach into that part of you that's willing to start from scratch again.
And I think, starting from that perspective of, what will I do if something goes wrong is actually in the end an optimistic gesture, because it's saying, even if this doesn't work out the way I think it will, I will find a way and I will get this done.
Yeah. Okay. And I know that, Lauren, something you talked about when you were speaking was about your committee, like kind of like ask your advisor what they think. And when I heard that, I was very happy, because that's very linked to our next question. Somewhere in the mix, scholars are expected to pick members of their dissertation committee. And so we have two questions here. For the benefit of those who are listening who do not know what this is, what is a dissertation committee? And what are some factors you advise prospective and current students to consider in picking members of this committee?
Great question. So your committee is going to consist of your advisor or supervisor, and that is going to be the person who you work with the most closely and the person who really has the final say over whether your content is effective and whether you've accomplished the dissertation project of contributing to knowledge in your field. So that's going to be the main gatekeeper to earning the degree, the advisor, and the one with whom you want to have a really great working relationship. And then the committee will include 2 to 3 other scholars in your field. And they're there kind of as a system of checks and balances to make sure that your advisor is treating you fairly and treating your work fairly, and to bring different perspectives to it as well. So the extent to which you work with those individuals and how closely is kind of on a case-by-case basis. And it depends in large part too on your relationship with your advisor, whether you need one of those people to step in and pull a little more weight, or whether you always go to your advisor first and then one of those individuals. But they're really there as, a system of bringing new innovative thought to it that your advisor, who's very close to the subject like you are, might not have, as well as making sure that your advisor is being objective with you. And then you'll usually also have an outside reader, somebody who is outside your specific department. And again, that's just another layer of somebody with a slightly different perspective, looking at your research in a different way. My advisor and committee members were all from the English department, but my outside reader was from the music department, which, because I was looking at gesture and rhythmic language, turned out to be a really interesting perspective, and she really helped me shape one of my chapters. So those are kind of the component parts of your dissertation committee. And what I would suggest looking for when you're selecting that committee is obviously, what is their research? How well do your interests align with yours, whether that's the exact topic or an adjacent topic or a perspective that you don't initially have, but you need to bring in. And in addition to that, how do you work with that person on an interpersonal level? If you are someone who is very free form with how you work and how you write, having an advisor who has that same perspective might feel comfortable, but might prevent you from moving forward. It might work better for you to have somebody who's a little bit more organized and can help give you milestones and goals to achieve. On the other hand, you don't want to have totally different working styles so that it's really difficult to work together. So you want to look for somebody who complements you, pushes you in the ways that you need to be pushed, but also somebody that you can develop a good rapport with and a good working relationship with.
thank you, Lauren, for telling us the different bits and pieces of the dissertation, kind of like the members of one's dissertation committee, from their main advisor to the committee members, the outside reader, and also for giving advice on, hey, choose someone whose academic style kind of complements yours while ensuring that they push you towards achieving your goals and objectives. So thanks for sharing those pointers, and something to keep in mind.
Then I guess one of the points that everything is geared towards is the defense, at least. What tips would you give for someone to excel at this point, to have a nice defense?
I love this question because one of my favorite tips of advice, I feel like the word defense is a misnomer in some ways, right? It sets you up like you're going into a boxing ring and it's like you versus your committee and you've got your fists up and you're ready to go. And really, that shouldn't be the vibe, I guess. I really hope that isn't. What my advice is to tell people, as scary as it may seem, please try to enjoy it. The truth is, if your advisor didn't think you were ready, then you probably aren't going to be allowed in that room to begin with. And so you've got this. Just go in there and enjoy it. Know that for the first and last time, you have 4, 5, or maybe even 6 people who have actually read your dissertation carefully and are going to think about it critically with you in a room and talk about what's good and bad and innovative and fascinating about the work that you've done. That's an amazing opportunity. So relish it and be excited. And the other thing I tell people is to record it. Now, not every school allows this, so, if you can, but go in there and if they'll let you, make an audio recording, because they're going to say things during that hour or 2 hours that you are all discussing this scholarship that could be really valuable when you want to make it into a book or a journal article or build upon it in the future. And, it's a very emotional experience, the dissertation defense. So it's hard to remember a lot that happens once you're on the other side of it. So 2 main tips are enjoy it, have fun, be excited about the fact that these people care about your work because no one else is going to care about your dissertation this much again. And the other one is to try to record it, or if you can't, see if you can get a good friend to come with you and take notes. And if not, then maybe just try to sit down afterwards and write down as many things as you can remember that were said during that time. But try to capture some of the wisdom that will emerge in that session and use it in the future.
And I really wish someone had given me that advice before my defense, because the first thing that my outside committee member said to me after I had passed was, I know you probably want to go to the bar, but I would recommend sitting down and making notes for a few hours, because this will be really helpful when you try to turn this into a book or a journal article. And I did, in fact, go to the bar, and I really wish that I had recorded the session. So I don't advise either.
Lauren, can't you do both though? Can't you record it on your way to the bar?
If you record it, then you don't have to worry about notes.
Indeed, true. But at least here we are. At the end of the day, there is a book. So you eventually got both of them. You went to the bar and somehow there's still a book.
Good point.
And yes, indeed, it's very good to hear such way one should look at this defense more like a conversation and not a battlefield, because really across various times in our academic career, we see it as it's always they versus us versus me, and I have to try to prove to them that what I've done makes sense and defend it, not just have a conversation with them, and to learn from them and exchange ideas. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Alan. It's been such a great time. I don't know if you have something you would like to tell us about, or questions for Ebel and I.
I was about to say that you guys let us go real easy.
Thank you for that.
I was going to say my big hope for all your listeners, because I imagine You guys are doing a great service by helping people in grad school understand what grad school is really like. And that seems to be something we're striving to do in the book. And so for all you listeners out there, just want you to take away from this that you're not alone and that this doesn't have to be an isolating process. Grad school is not easy, but it is tremendously valuable. And probably the thing we say the most to anyone we get a chance is use all of your resources to help you through that process. Friends, family, coworkers, your other students in your cohort, advisors, mentors, anyone that you can get to help you through that process. Take advantage of those opportunities and don't feel like you have to go it completely alone.
Absolutely. And similarly, I would just share the best advice I got when I told one of my favorite undergraduate professors I wanted to apply to grad school. He said, "That's great, but only do it if you can live your life while you're in grad school. If you start to think, I'll finish grad school and then my real life will begin, then it's not worth it." So whatever ways you can create that space to feel like you're living your life, taking advantage of, what grad school has to offer, but you're still progressing through your life rather than just waiting for it to be over. That really helped me frame it in my mind and enjoy the graduate school process.
Nice. These are quite some top-notch advice. Thank you very much. Ebele?
I love to enjoy life, Sha. And I feel like you never know. Like life it can be long, but it can also be short. So definitely what Lauren has just said about if you're going to have to stop your life to go to grad school. I do think that I stopped my life like the first half of my grad school experience. And then COVID happened, and I think we all just thought deeply about our lives. I think it's such a great time to meet people because you're in a new environment with new people from diverse backgrounds. So take advantage of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if it gives you the opportunity to travel or work somewhere other than a cubicle, whether that's a coffee shop or another country while you're writing, that's definitely something to take advantage of as well.
Yeah.
Great. This conversation has been quite motivating. And yes, I've read the book as well, and it really is a gem and recommend it to people. Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you, Lauren. And thank you to our listeners for listening to this episode of Grad School Body. And Alan, where can our listeners connect with you? Also, Lauren, how can they connect with you? What's your preferred channels of connecting with people?
Yeah, find us any way you want. We are at dissertation-editor.com for anyone interested in anything related to dissertations. Also on LinkedIn and Instagram as Dr. Alan Roda, and would love to connect with anyone through any of those media.
Absolutely. And Instagram and TikTok as Dr. Lauren Saunders for me, or LinkedIn or our website. Find us any way you can.
It's been a pleasure really chatting with the both of you, Dr. Lauren and Alan, and we hope to communicate a lot more with you in the future.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much. This has been wonderful.